wokies to like get really mad.
Right.
So,
Well, that's just kind of any other Monday for you, though. That's kind of like,
it's
that's not
every day.
unusual.
No, I
Yeah.
know, but this time, like I said, the things that you're not meant to say. I was like, to understand how we got to everyone I don't like is a Nazi and everyone I disagree with is a fascist, we need to go through and recap how this all started. And yeah, I think I'm going to get in trouble.
Well, look, I'm also trying to get in trouble. I have uploaded 2 videos on the subject of climate change, which is the topic that YouTube is most sensitive about in the last week. And I have a 3rd one coming out on Wednesday. So I'm kind of, yes, we're both living a little bit dangerously at the moment.
Have you gotten a strike yet?
I've gotten really, really good at dancing with the algorithm. I haven't had a YouTube strike in a very long time, and I've never lost a page on any platform ever. I've had suspensions on Facebook and other things, the restrictions, and they reduce my reach because I'm posting low quality content and all that kind of stuff. But I've never lost a page. And I have no active strikes on my YouTube, and I haven't had any for a while. So I've kind of, it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it.
Yes, I'm the same. I actually never lost anything during COVID either. Like my Instagram account, same one I've had since 2010.
Yep. My YouTube is the same account I've had since 2009. My Facebook since 2012, I think it is. So yeah, it's just, you just got to be really careful how you say things.
Well, we should probably say hello to our audience.
Hello, audience. Apparently you joined us at some point while we were just talking about the joys of being like people who post things online.
Of always getting in trouble. It's I was going through like what to talk about tonight, and I was like, oh, it's been a fairly light week. And then I was like, no, it hasn't.
No, it hasn't.
No,
what planet are you on?
I always I try and do the weekend off X or the weekend off Twitter.
Right.
And I go, all's well in the world. Because when you're not on the internet, you're kind of sheltered. And then you go back on the internet for a minute and you're like, whoa.
I know. Thank God for the internet, because if it wasn't for that ability to plug back into the apocalypse, you might actually be deceived into thinking that life was good and that you could enjoy yourself. So thank God that we have the internet.
Luckily, I opened it back up and got immediately depressed.
That's right. Excellent. I'm glad you got your what is it? Your dose of vitamin black pill. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, Katie Burgess asks actually a really good question here. Hi all. Do we have a name for the group chat yet? Oddsters, the odd ones. I want to propose oddies.
I like oddies.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cute. The oddies.
I can get on board with that. Or the odd ones. I did like that. That was very ominous. The odd ones.
It's a bit formal for me. I don't know why, but I feel like it just needs to be a bit more cash. It's the oddies.
The oddies. Old mate.
Yeah.
Just throw that around.
Old mate. Yeah, old mate. That's that'll be a good one. All right. So what are we talking about?
Okay, so first one, I found this out just before, and it's funny because I was in the shower the other day and I said to G, I was like, water smells funny. He's like, what? I was like, no, the water smells funny. Like, because the water's hot. It's like you can almost smell the chlorine or whatnot. And I didn't think much of it. I was just like, oh, it's just, I guess they've poured a little too much chlorine in the water today. And then I open it up to 7 News today, and there's now a public alert that those in the southeast can't drink our tap water at the moment because it is basically not fit for drinking.
And this, may I remind you, is what is happening in our civilized first world country. Aren't you glad that you are taxed when you add it all together at something like 60 to 65%? Because that's the price you pay for living in a civilized country where the tap water is drinkable, where criminals get dealt with by a police and justice system that is actually functional. You have a healthcare system that doesn't make you wait 6 hours for an ambulance and then sit outside of emergency in the back of that ambulance until you're dead. Just imagine how bad things could be if we didn't pay all that tax.
Right? This is the thing. It's interesting. I put up like, some question times and on my Instagram, and I was, people asked me questions, and I had a genuine question. I don't think this person was deliberately trying to troll me, but they were asking me, why do you think Victoria is so bad? What do you see that I'm not seeing? And whenever I get those questions, I kind of get jerked out of my little echo chamber, don't I? Because, obviously I'm aligned with people who see the world the way I do. We're small business owners, we're entrepreneurs, we're politically awake, I guess you could say. And then when you talk to, and I'm not saying this term to be disparaging, guys, but when you say a normie, someone who's not necessarily reading the news every day, and they say, is it that bad? I just genuinely looked at them like they had 40 heads. I was like, huh.
Yeah, but this is the thing. It's very easy to be in a bubble where you don't observe what's really going on around you. And this, I was raised, and I think most of us are, we're raised with this perception that tyranny looks a certain way in the movies. Because all the post-apocalyptic movies, all of the sci-fi movies with some sort of a tyrannical government, they have a certain look to them. And I will admit that increasingly the world is starting to look the way that those movies look, but that isn't inherently what necessary. It doesn't have to be that way. And that's why I think Venezuela was so transformative for me, and why I talk about it all the time. And people are probably sick of hearing it, but every single time we go on live, there's going to be someone hearing these things for the first time. But the thing that was so jarring about Venezuela was how incredibly normal it felt while children were dying of malnutrition, and hospitals were reusing old scalpels, and people were basically imprisoned in the country and not allowed to leave. And yet you could walk down the streets of Caracas and the sun's still in the air. The sun's still shining. The birds are still flying around. The cars still drive past you in the street. Yeah, okay, they're older and they're rustier and all the rest of it, but you could very easily con yourself into believing how normal it all is. And that was really why Venezuela left the impression on me that it did, was because I suddenly was able to see what was happening around me without the expectations that Hollywood had created for what things ought to look like.
Yeah. I was the same in Cuba, actually. I'm just going to show you guys a photo. I'm just going to pull it up. So Cuba is obviously like really romantic. It's warm, it's balmy, and everyone thinks like Havana, hot summer's nights, everyone's sitting there salsa dancing and drinking mojitos. And sure, there is definitely an element of that. And, you think about the vintage cars and, oh, wow, it's like going back in a time capsule.
It's romance.
Yeah. So I'm just bringing these photos up, and I've got to, I always do this. I never have this pre-planned because I never think we're going here. And yet here we go. So I've just screenshot these photos so I can show you. But, what always was confronting about going to places like Cuba is just how life goes on in a weird way. Like, to you and I, we'll look at that going, this is horrendous. Like, how can anyone survive this? But to them, that is their normal,
Correct.
So
that's the baseline. When I was in Papua New Guinea, I was in Port Moresby for about 10 days. It was just normal. Oh, the water's gone off again. That was normal. Just the water pressure would cut out, and you've got no running water, and you just kept a couple of potfuls of water on the stove. And look, it shouldn't be more than 2 or 3 hours. The water will be back on. Lots of parts of the world are like that with electricity, or like that with internet, or various other things. And people do get used to that. But I think in Australia, we have this idea that the way that we've lived, the way that we've been brought up, that's our birthright, that somehow it can't get worse than that. It's always just going to get better. And of course, right now it is getting worse than that. You just have to look at the reality of the quality of life that we're living on, household inflation adjusted real income, or real disposable income, sorry. And that's gone down. We've gone backwards by about 13 years over just the last 3 years. And so we really are, we've actually entered a time when people say, oh, it's hard. Part of me wants to tell them to shut up. We're living in the best times that have ever existed, which is also true if you just take a step back at and look at sort of history. But what's also true is that life has gotten a lot harder in the last 3 years. But there is no flaw on that. Life can still get a lot harder than what it is right now, unless we very quickly, like quick smart, start to turn some things around.
100%. So this is that photo I was telling you about. This is the Malecon. So that's the main drag of Cuba. And that's the postcard that everyone sees, right? You've got the old vintage car, you got the sun going down. It looks really beautiful.
Is this one of your photos?
Yeah, it's one of my photos.
Yeah, nice. It's beautiful.
And then we contrast to the opposite. So that's facing that's the ocean there. And then if you turn around, this is what was behind me.
Yeah.
And so this is the thing, like, life is going on normally in parts, but then you're looking at that. Now, obviously, I've chosen to shoot with that dilapidated building at the front of the frame.
Oh, sure.
And you can see
you're
like
making
people,
a point.
Yeah, and you can see down there people are going about their normal business. That was my point. That is just normal to them. That's the point. It's this accepted dilapidation and this this breakdown in their infrastructure, and they're like,
Yeah. So
You know?
right now we have a situation in Victoria's hospitals where you can't get an ambulance, or not reliably. You can't reliably get an ambulance if you need one. And to be clear, that's no slight on the ambulance and the emergency EMTs, etc. themselves. This is a systemic failing that's happening right now. And we kind of have this idea that, oh, it won't get any worse. Well, we also know that there's not a lot of beds in hospitals. So even if you make it to hospital, you're not necessarily going to get to stay overnight. Even if you need to stay overnight, there might not be a bed for you, but it can't get any worse. Oh, and also elective surgery, and sometimes more serious sort of types of elective surgery, you can wait for months or even years to get that. But it can't get any worse. And we keep telling ourselves that somehow we've magically bottomed out when there's no evidence that we have. And the advantage that I have, the advantage that you have, and I know the advantage that a lot of our viewers have, because our viewers have traveled, a lot of them, I've seen what a healthcare system looks like when they can't afford new scalpels. They are performing surgery on people with used scalpels. I've told the story before, so I'll tell it very, very briefly. A man that I met in Venezuela, after I'd left Venezuela, his story got through to me via a mutual acquaintance. He had a daughter who was expecting, and the hospital system has run out of money completely. So what he did was he basically sold all of his worldly possessions. He carried the money that he got from that to the Colombian border, which is a grueling journey. That's not imagine you've seen the pictures of like Halong Bay in Vietnam and these places with these hills that are like this going in and out of the water. Well, that's what the hills around that part of Venezuela and Colombia are like. Obviously not in the water, but they're like that. They're just these vertical up and down things. It is a grueling journey. He had to get on a bus. It was multiple days of travel. Get to the border, find a Colombian smuggler, and there's plenty of them because there's an enormous amount of illegal trade going on, because they depend on that for survival in Venezuela. Hand over his entire net worth, the entire value of his life, basically, to this smuggler, who then disappears and comes back to him with a package. In that package were painkillers, antibiotics, antiseptics and antiseptic wipes, saline solution, clean bandages, hypodermic needles, scalpels, the absolute basic consumables that we take completely for granted at every single GP's office in anywhere in Australia. And yet they do not have them in the universal healthcare system of Venezuela. And this is the thing, just like you pointed out with that photo, people paint this romantic picture. People say, oh, but Venezuela has cheap petrol and universal healthcare and universal education and this and this and this. Yeah, on paper they do. You can tick all of those boxes, but you don't want to live that reality. And in Australia, we think that we can't end up there. And unfortunately, we can.
Yeah, and I mean, I said this a couple of weeks ago. I said that Australians deserve socialism because we're at that point. And I think our biggest issue is, everyone that's here in the chat is mostly aligned with us, to a degree.
Yeah.
The problem is the people who aren't feeling this pinch are people who are working in the public sector, people who are employed by the NDIS, people who have guaranteed jobs, whether they work in healthcare and whatnot. And so they're not seeing it. They're not privy to it. They're not seeing that shrink. And that's what it is. It's not like a immediate overflow like zombie apocalypse. It's a slow, creeping, crawling crumble. And for example, I mean, COVID was different because obviously that was a lockdown. So we just stopped services. But the backlog on surgeries, on people not going to the dentist and people not getting the
cancer screenings.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
But now it's the opposite. So G has a client who's a dentist, and he was chatting to him and saying, oh, how's things? How's business? Now, this is a dentist. Everyone has teeth. Everyone has cavities.
Sure.
Everyone needs a dentist. This dentist was saying work is so slow. People aren't going to the dentist. Why? They can't afford it. It's at the bottom of the priority list. Now, the only reason people go to the dentist is if they absolutely have to because they've got a toothache. Very few people doing preventative stuff at the moment. And it's the same for, screenings and tests and things like that. And this is that slow creep. So that insidious creep. So for example, you might have a cavity, and if you went to the dentist today, it's just as simple as getting a filling. But if you leave it until the point where you get a toothache, you actually need a root canal. So it ends up being like $150 or $200 to $2,000.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. Go.
Well, this is kind of a universal principle. Being poor is very expensive. So if you're so poor that you can't buy the bulk pack of whatever it is and you have to buy them individually, you end up paying more per one. And if something were able to change for you and you could get that little bit of money so that you could buy the bulk pack, then you'd save a little bit of money, and then you could afford to buy the next bulk pack of some other thing and save a bit of money there, and so on. The same is true, of time. You get poor enough and you can't afford a washing machine. Now you're taking your clothing down to a laundromat. It's costing you an enormous amount of time, not to mention the cost of a laundromat these days. I don't know the last time you went to a laundromat. I had to wash a very large doona recently because the dog puked on it, and it cost me $40 by the time I walked out of the laundromat. And so if you're already poor, you drive a cheap car, it breaks down all the time. You end up in all these situations where you really do get sort of stuck and sucked down into that poverty. And that's why I think it is just so cruel when a government takes actions that make its people poorer. Obviously, Venezuela, Cuba, these are extreme cases. But in every society, including Australia, there are people who are only just getting by. There's the full spectrum. Yeah, okay, being poor in Australia is a lot better than being poor in Venezuela. I'd much rather be poor here, but I'd rather not be poor anywhere because it sucks. And anytime a government does anything that makes life even more difficult and just adds to the suction, just sucking people down who are already struggling, I think it is just the height of cruelty.
Yeah, 100%. And I just wanted to point out this. I just saw this. Where did it go? Sorry, the comments move so fast. Here's one. Poor lol, I haven't eaten red meat in 3 months. Stay there.
Wow.
And then this one. I spend $30 per week on laundry. It's cheaper just to buy new clothes.
Wow.
Now, let's stick on that.
Yeah.
This is where you have the people who align with the socialism and the communism and the leftist ideology. They'll sit there and preach about sustainability, environmental, fast fashion's bad, fast furniture's bad, fast everything's bad. But in the same breath, they're telling you that you should be embracing green energy. We should all be having solar. We should all be saying no to gas. We shouldn't have fireplaces. So all these, the green policies. And what you're essentially doing is you're creating this market where to live as we were, which elevated everyone out of poverty, is no longer economically viable. So now you push people to exactly what you said, going to a laundromat because it's somewhat cheaper, or disposing of the clothes. And now, when was the last time you looked at a photo of Bangladesh?
Funnily enough, I watched a video out of Bangladesh just today. However, it's not a thing I do very often.
Now, a lot of people talk about India being very polluted and, third world. Bangladesh is the next level. And Bangladesh is where there's a lot of clothing trade, where a lot of the fast fashion stuff is made. For example, you big brands. That's where they make it, because India is no longer considered cheap. So you got to go further and further away. And mark my words, they'll start going to Africa soon. They'll start.
It's already migrating. Absolutely. Yep.
And what you see is such a disregard for basic sanitary conditions. There is no recycling. There is no garbage collection. People are defecating on the sides of the road. That's what it looks like, because it's no longer viable to live this life that we live, this privileged life. To them, it's just the bare basics. Will I survive today? Will I get cholera? Will I get typhoid? Will my baby have a fever? So when you see, sorry.
Let me put a slightly different lens on that. For them, it's not so much that it's no longer possible to live like we do. Those cultures have never lived like we do. They've never had the wealth to do that. And it can be a little bit difficult for us sometimes to separate. Like, we see people in Bangladesh, they're living in abject poverty, but a huge proportion of them have mobile phones. And we can't quite reconcile that, because for us, mobile phones came after sanitation. But they're emerging at a different time, and their priorities are different, and their opportunities are different. So we need to make some allowance for that they are emerging at a different time and technologies exist differently. But fundamentally, I would rather be poor in Australia than middle class in Bangladesh, for sure.
Not only that, I just saw something in the comments, and I've already lost the comment, but it's talking about solar panels. So that's a greens thing, right? Everyone should be getting solar panels. Everything should be wind and solar. Great. Do you remember a couple of months ago, Abby Chatfield was on that SBS program, and she's like, well, I have solar, so it's all free. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yes.
Right? So now the issue with solar is, obviously, it's weather dependent. If the clouds are out, well, no solar for you. So you are going to have to use coal. And not only that, now you're going to be punished. So I know we've talked about this before, but for someone like Abby Chatfield, she's like, oh, well, I'll just buy the battery that I need. Well, too bad if you firstly rent, so you can't have solar because you can't put it on your house because you don't own it. And secondly, if you've used up all your money to go and put the solar on there, and that last bit of extension to get the $10,000 battery is outside your means, Yep. The goalpost keeps shifting. So you want the majority of people to adopt these policies, yet you're not putting them in a position where it becomes like it's that whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If I'm in a point where I can eat well, I can go out and have some social time with friends and family, I can not think about, can I pay my utility bills next month? Then I might think, oh, hey, actually, I will donate to that charity. Actually, I will give a bit more. Actually, I will participate there. But you can't do that when you're going, I don't know if I can pay my gas bill next month.
And more than that, when you're in a position of relative comfort, you notice the rubbish in the gutter and you go, that bothers me. I don't like that. I want to live in a place that doesn't have that. There's that saying that the man whose child is hungry doesn't care if the animal is almost extinct. Right? Yeah. They're going to hunt whatever they're going to hunt. If you want to preserve animals, if you want to preserve habitats, if you want to have people actually managing their waste properly, etc., those are things that happen naturally as people become wealthier. And oftentimes the Greens and these environmentalists see the world in the reverse. They say, well, we have to make people poorer so that they consume less. Well, actually, if we made people wealthier, they would recycle and regenerate and reuse, or even just use waste burning for energy production and these things to dispose of the waste products. They would care about the natural environment a lot more. A poor country, a country living in abject poverty, can't afford things like national parks, can't afford to have things like rubbish traps put across rivers, the way that you'll see the Yarra River or other places, to collect the rubbish that does fall in. That stuff's completely unimaginably unaffordable in a place like India, even in large parts of China, although those are certainly very wealthy parts of China as well. Caring about the environment and contributing to charities, as you say, etc., that is something that wealthy people can afford to do. And it's one of the reasons why capitalism and the emergence of wealth through capitalism correlates quite directly with looking after the environment.
Yeah. I wanted to show you this story. So this is a bit niche. I was trying to pull up the outrage clip, but I'll settle for the actual story.
Before you jump into that, can I just bring up this comment? You brought it up earlier before. I just want to say, firstly, to Ryet9 or Ryet9, firstly, that's a very niche comment. So well done, you. You've been paying attention to the both of us and what we bring up way more than we should. Number two, please don't do this. This is a one-way train to alcohol poisoning and liver failure. Okay, just for your health, please don't do this.
And guys, if you want to ask us a question, if you want us to cover a topic, make sure you super chat us so we can see the comment, and we'll be, we'll talk about whatever it is that you need to get us talking about. But I wanted to give you an example, again, contrasting to the left, and there's this expectation, this purity test, this ideological test of pushing it further and further because the horizon lines just keep shifting. Are you familiar with someone called Chapel Roan?
I do know the name. Musician.
So this is Chapel Roan.
I do know the name.
Adding her now. So I got to remove that, add that. There we go. So recently she announced that from every dollar from every ticket sale, she'll be donating to some charity. I can't remember what charity it was. And so that was her thing, right? So $1 from every sale. Now you would think, oh, that's lovely. No, it's not lovely to the left. What it is outrageous that she's not donating the entire purchase price. Because that's the expectation now. Chapel Roan's a celebrity. She makes money. She should be giving all of her money because eat the rich. And I find this very interesting, right? Because aside from, we already know the use case for this. We already know that venue costs, staff costs, we all know what goes into having a performance. That aside, Chapel Roan now is not allowed to make any money. She has to immediately give it to the collective pot, which sounds sneakily like communism, does it not?
Well, it does. Where we're at. Yeah. And can I just, you just said, sort of put aside those people who work on it. Actually, I want to bring them back in, because one of the most universal truths in any functioning economy is that where there is someone making a lot of money, the people that are actually making it possible for them to do that are also making money. Now, sure, maybe not as much, maybe not anywhere near as much, but the economic activity created by that creative person or that business genius or that innovator or that person who just really gets advertising and how it works, they end up making lots and lots of money, but they build a machine around them to enable them to do that. And the members of that machine usually end up getting very well paid as well, or at the very least are able to earn a living. I I do not envy, for example, roadies. Being a roadie, someone who works on these shows and travels around, drives a truck, sets it up, packs it down, it is a thankless job. It is physically demanding. It is horribly antisocial, hours, time away from family, all the rest of it. Yeah, okay, maybe it's all right if you're a young man and you're single and all the rest of it, but it's not an enjoyable job overall. But there are people who love it, and there are people who do it. And someone like Chapel Roan, love or hate her music, is providing work for those people. You turn around and self-righteously say, oh, Chapel Roan, you shouldn't be allowed to make any money out of your concerts. Well, then the concerts disappear, and so do all the opportunities for everyone else involved in that. You're not just hurting the rich person, you're hurting a bunch of hardworking people as well.
Yeah, but there's and again, this becomes the issue with the left and the way they think about everything. It's such a hive mind that if you're the have and they're the have not, you should be giving it to the have nots. There's no level of, well, hang on a minute. Let's make sure some people, like if you're going out and earning that money and you're doing well for yourself, you're not allowed to enjoy it until everyone's living the same way. And that's that whole collectivism of socialism, right? But the issue with this is, and I want to point this out with small business, particularly in places like Victoria, when small businesses are thriving, they're looking to scale. They're looking to hire people. They're looking to upgrade, to buy new gear, to maybe move into a bigger premises, to put on a receptionist or whatever it might be. They can't do that if their profits are shrinking. Now, everyone thinks, oh, profits. Woolies and Coles, they're price gouging. Their profits are 2-3%, or their margins, sorry.
Yeah, margins,
How do you expect them to employ people? And, I know remember when everyone got really mad because I started bringing in all the self-checkouts?
Yep.
Now, that was what, 15 years ago, 10 years ago?
Something like that, yeah.
I remember looking at that going, oh, I know why they're doing that. Everyone's like, oh, it's cuss-cutting. Yeah, sure. But also have a look at how many shops they've had to open in the last 10 years alone. There is a Coles and Woolies every bloody kilometre now because of the density of our population. I know it's now part of the government's civic planning, right? That a supermarket has to be was it 10,000 people?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And so the reason they're doing that is it's unsustainable to keep building, because Coles and Woolies build their big buildings. They then have to have new redistribution centers. They then have to buy more freight. They then have all this back end stuff that they've got to do. Now, I'm not defending the supermarkets. I'm merely saying that as that business is scaling, there are so many more costs involved, which means that when the government moves the needle, even the smallest amount, it ricochets all the way down the P&L. And it gets to a point where you go, hey, what was 5% margin is now 3%. Any more, guys, we're going to have to start closing stores. We're going to have to start firing people.
Yeah. And hey, if you're convinced that the supermarkets are ripping everybody off and they're price gouging and they're making super profits, buy some shares. Like, put yourself on the other side of that equation. If they're ripping everybody off, then someone's making a lot of money. Must be the shareholders, right? So just become a shareholder. And by the way, most people with a superannuation account probably are shareholders in the major supermarkets without even necessarily realizing it. Now, I want to jump into a comment here by Catherine Cavaney saying, Topher, change your views on Assange again. No, I've always known he's a lefty. What I've said is that he was right to have done the WikiLeaks dump. That's what I've said. He's always been a lefty. And I don't expect that he'll ever change from being a lefty, but he was right about the WikiLeaks dump. So no, my views, his behavior is exactly consistent with what my views of him became after I realized I was wrong about WikiLeaks in the first instance. So yeah, no, sorry. I don't know if that was meant to be having a go at me or not, but whatever it was, you missed.
Should we touch on the protest?
Yeah, let's touch on the protest. It's worth talking about. Thank you, Steve B. I appreciate that. It's
Thanks
worth talking about,
guys. We're very grateful for them.
Very much appreciate it. It's really interesting to me. Now, okay, a couple of things. Firstly, genuinely a strong turnout, 90,000 plus. There are people claiming 300,000. I don't know. I haven't actually looked at the photos in detail, but multiple tens of, if not into the 100,000 plus. Okay, really successful protest in that regard. I haven't really looked at it closely. I'm not aware of any really, really ugly stuff going on. But then again, you might have some things loaded up that I've been busy all day today making my videos and stuff. So I might be wrong about some of that. So credit to them for organizing and engaging in what, as far as I'm aware, was a relatively successful, successful in terms of numbers, very much so. But, a relatively orderly protest. that's as things ought to be in a democratic country. We could quibble about whether the bridge should have been closed or not, whether that's an appropriate use of publicly funded infrastructure, and there's a conversation to have about that. However, it was allowed by the courts. The court said, yep, you can go over the bridge, and they did, and okay, fair play to them. I'm not sure what they've achieved, though.
Yeah. Look, I think it's getting to a point where you're pushing people too far. So I have a couple of issues. I'm just pulling up a couple of photos for you. So the biggest issue I have is the holding up of the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah.
Yep.
So we saw a lot of that. We saw people wearing the green headbands from Hamas, and we saw, I don't want to make assumptions, I'm pretty sure it's the ISIS flag. So I've got some footage for you. So I'll bring this up. Now, I'm on the record as saying, like, I don't care either way. Like, I'm just so over it at this point. I'm over our cities being co-opted by these protests every week. I'm over people screaming at me on social media to talk about Palestine and use my platform. I'm exhausted by it because it's not the only thing in the world that's going on. There's lots of bad things going on in the world. And I'm quite frustrated by it. But when I see things like this, this is a video, and it's a huge protest. Great. Yep. I have no issue with protesting. I'm pro-protesting. I have an issue with the fact that these protests have been going on every weekend for almost 2 years now. It's disruptive. It's deliberately trying to cause chaos in the city, and that's what they want. Now, look, I can get on board with the fact that most people who attended this are just, they don't want children to starve. I think that's how a lot of people look at Gaza, and I agree. I get around that sentiment 100%. Yep. What I don't agree with is this adoption of Hamas propaganda, of holding up signs of the supreme leader from the Ayatollahs, and also now starting to embrace parts of radical Islam. The fact that someone like Clem Ford can come out and saying, oh, I'm not going to condemn Hamas, when other world leaders in the Middle East are now saying that Hamas has to go, I just can't get around it. The way things work within it, whenever it's a left-leaning protest, is all the splinter groups come together. So you've got all your queers for Palestine, you've got your pro-socialists and your pro-communists, you've got your Islamic extremists, you've got your LGBT trans rights. They're all collectively there. And they get to a point where you're useful idiots. And so everyone might be there because they're like, oh, well, I want to be on the right side of history. But what you don't realize that you're standing with is you're pushing a pretty hostile agenda. Now they're like, now the sentiment is, oh, it's the biggest protest in Australian history. This is democracy in action. And look, I have no idea about numbers. Let's just speculate. Let's say it's 300,000, 150,000. G was pointing this out to me before. Okay, so they're like, this is democracy in action. The majority agree with us. Well, no, the population of Australia is 27 million. You had 150, 300,000. I have no idea, but that's not a majority. That's groupthink in action.
Sure, it does represent far more people than the number that were there, and that is true. Like they sit there and they go, well, let's say the official number is 90,000. I'm going to use that number. They got 90,000 people there. They could rightly say that they probably represent the sentiment of 900,000 Australians, maybe 2 or 3 million Australians. They're probably representative of the sentiment and passion of maybe 10% of the Australian population. Now, in a functioning democracy, that's valid. Right, you're allowed. In fact, in a functioning democracy or a functioning any country with freedom and human rights, one person is enough. You're allowed to have whatever views and beliefs you have. However, to try and turn around and say we got that many people on the bridge, therefore the government now has to treat us as though everyone agrees with us, as though this should be the official position of the Australian government, taxpayer-funded Australian government, funded out of all of our hard work. That's another stretch entirely. I remember when I was in London. So I was in London for their first big anti-Israel, and I call them anti-Israel, not pro-Palestine, because that's in truth, if you actually attend them, that's what they actually are. The first anti-Israel rally that occurred on the streets of London, because we were there shortly after the attack on October 7th. And walking around, there were an enormous number of people. And so I literally spoke to people. I was interviewing people. I was with Rukshan Fernando, for those of you that know him. And I was walking around and he was interviewing people, and there were people literally saying, oh, we just come to all the protests. We've been coming to every protest since the 1970s. And literally just that's their, that was their attachment to the cause was, oh no, we just show up to these things. Now, there were other people, admittedly, who very much knew why they were there. There were people who would have killed each other had they actually met, in Palestine somewhere. Of course, all the, the Queers for Palestine, all that sort of absurdity. But you walk through and you cannot escape. Two things were very clear to me. Number one, the vast majority of people had no idea that they were being used as meat shields, basically, for some of the nastiest and most horrible people that you can imagine. People that really would love to, behead every single person of a certain race. People who would love to commit genocide, actual genocide themselves. But also, you very quickly realize that the socialists in the West, there's all these different groups, and they all think that they're using each other. The socialists were in there with a tent. Every 300 meters, there was another tent selling socialist alternative merchandise. The irony of that is not lost on me. The irony of that is not lost on me at all. Handing out free signs and placards for people to hold up that had whatever slogan, and then socialists across the bottom. So the socialists thought that they were using everybody else to promote the Socialist Party. The Islamists are using everybody else to promote hatred for Israel. The queer and gay and transgender sort of people are thinking that they're jumping on this cause that makes them part of the tent. They're like, oh, we're the cool kids now. We're in with all of them rather than being separated. All these groups think they're using each other. And I have to agree with your assessment that you gave a second ago, Carly. The vast majority of them, all but the Islamists, are unfortunately useful idiots. They are being used by people that they do not understand.
Can I just point out this comment? I know Amanda's our resident troll, but this is the sentiment I fucking cannot stand. Oh, we care about people who don't hate us. Could you? That kind of emotional blackmail rhetoric, go fuck off. Honestly, fuck off. Do not put words in my mouth. Do not tell me how I think and feel. Do not tell me. But I heard a really good thing today, and maybe you can help me unpack this. And it was basically like, if I can predict your answers to any given topic or question, and I know that it's going to be either fascism, the patriarchy, or Nazism, you have the intellectual depth of a puddle. If you cannot use nuance and bring in discourse around whatever topic it is and understand that simultaneously at any given time, there's all these different facets to it. There's all these different biases. There's all these different inflection points. And all you can do is blanket statements like, you must hate people. You must be a bigot. You must be a Nazi. Go fuck off, Amanda. Honestly, grow up.
So,
That's
Amanda,
where I'm at with that shit.
I would say the vast majority of queers who believe that people hate them, people don't hate them nearly as much as the queers imagine, right? This is an imaginary problem that they use for their own victim status because it's a victim economy. I don't hate a single queer person, a single transgender person, etc. But not wanting them to read books about being queer to my kids is not an act of hatred. No. That's an act of love for my own kids. But you interpret it as hatred because you need the victim status. You need to feel as though you're being oppressed by somebody. So the whole
love that we love a rant.
There we go. Love the rants. Look, I was going to say it took you 36 minutes and 45 seconds to get into your first spicy Carls. I think we got to get those numbers down. That's the reverse of the rookie numbers thing. We got to get that number down. We need to like 30 seconds in. No, we got to get like 30 seconds in, and bam, you're off on a spicy Carls rant right there.
just press my buttons.
That's right.
But, one of the things that I'm excited for at the moment is there's definitely starting to be a pushback. And again, it's that sort of, is it safe to do it? Everyone else is doing it, so I'm going to get on board now. And, we spoke last week about the American Eagle ad, and now you've already seen a couple of different companies embrace it, like Dunkin' Donuts. And what that's done is like someone's broken the that little barrier and watch as other people flood through. Because it's not – sorry.
Yep. No, you go.
I was going to say, it's not –
go.
I will rant in a minute.
You go.
Shut the fuck up. No.
Go.
Basically, once you cross that threshold and it feels safe to do it, watch as people start to grow a bit of a backbone and speak up and go, actually, no, I'm not going to be told that everything that I value is wrong and outdated. And the rhetoric around the whole Sydney Sweeney thing, I don't want to go over it again. But
No.
essentially it was basically like all they can see is it's Nazism, obviously. That's the
Yeah.
first thing they see. That's the first escalation point.
And
Well,
the last thing
99%
they
of
see.
yeah, most of us don't think that way.
No.
Like
No.
white people still exist, and I know you hate that, but they're still around and they're
Yeah.
okay to be around. It's not a terrible thing. But
Yeah.
white girl, blue jeans, obviously
Yeah.
Nazism.
Someone made a great point, actually. That Nordic look, the blonde hair, the blue eyes, blah, 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 represents maybe sort of 4-5% of the human population. I think maybe
It's
less.
really small, yeah.
And so she's actually a minority. Sorry, but if you
Yeah.
believe in minorities' rights, you better not be hanging shit on her for how she looks. Can I bring this up here? So Lemmy Winks, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. What do you guys make of the forensics report released by the Crisafulli government today, or just your general take on how his government is doing? I'm actually not familiar with the forensics report you're talking about, Lemmy. So I'm sorry, I can't comment on that. I think he's been a disappointment is my general sense. I think he's weak and he doesn't speak out as much as he should. He made some noise, for example, on tobacco wars. He was good on that for 2 seconds. And then all of a sudden it's gone. He doesn't sort of seem to have the follow through to actually turn the rhetoric into any kind of action. But that's my take on him.
Is this the guy, the Liberal Premier in Queensland?
Yeah. Queensland. Queensland?
Yeah.
Hang on. Let me fact check myself.
It's Queensland. Can I just interrupt grossly for a second? Because we didn't do this last time and we're very bad at this. So this is my opportunity to grift. So
I know where you're going with this, and I've just realized I have none of our merch in the studio with me to hold up.
We're both fucking useless at this.
We are. See, for people who are apparently grifters, just relentlessly grifting, we really suck at this.
Yeah, we're really bad. So guys, if you don't know already, this is our merch. It is all available for pre-order, and we're pre-ordering it because we just don't know what you guys like, what you don't want. So you've got a couple of choices here. You've got this is all just a simulation, right? T-shirt in ladies and men's, obviously. We've got the Stay on Tangent for those of you who are massive geeks and nerds, which comes in a hoodie as well. And then we've got obviously the best one, which is the Tangent Time. If you know, you know. And then I also believe Bugger Topher's merch. We'll go back to the first page. We've got a Spicy Carl's shirt and a hoodie. So, I mean, like, you know,
and let me
get
tell you,
around it.
Carly predicted that not a single person would buy a Spicy Carl's garment. Well, I can tell you that there have been at least one sold.
Have we just frozen? Topher. Have we lost Topher? Do I need to carry the weight of this show? Guys, this is the best day of my life.
I think we've lost you.
Me? It was you.
No, I'm hardwired in. My connection was perfect. I heard every word you said.
Oh, well, it was actually your video that went, so clearly.
Well, you know, that's it's because the speed of light is faster than the speed of sound. That's why you look smart until you open your mouth. So people said no one's gonna buy. People said no one's gonna buy a Spicy Carl's garment. At least one has sold. I'm actually not sure how many. At least one has sold. But guys, I would love for you to just pile in and get Spicy Carl's hoodies and Spicy Carl's tops, just for me to be able to rub it into Carly because she said no one would buy them.
Well, if one sold, it was probably I didn't buy my own. But yes, guys, the merch is there. So please do us a solid, support the channel. Yeah, we would appreciate that.
And can I say, Katie Burgess, you were there. You have got the T-shirt. Katie's been following me for a while and was a big part of all of what happened down in Melbourne and has got the I Was There shirt that, Carly, you designed. And I think you gave yourself RSI, making that little wireframe outline of Parliament House in Victoria.
I did, and I will never do that again.
So that was well done, Katie. Thank you for being there.
Do you know what's interesting? When you talk about those protests, the ones that were only like a couple hundred people, when I was doing the drone footage, I mean, I wasn't doing the drone footage. I heard someone was doing it. I wouldn't know anything about it.
Someone random person sent it through to me via anonymous means. I'll never be able to find out who that was. Yeah.
Anecdotal. It might have not even happened. It's probably AI.
Yeah. I probably imagined it.
I imagine sitting in the bushes doing that would have been quite terrifying and thinking like at any given point, someone's going to come and arrest you. And somehow I didn't. Them
That person,
randomly, no one was arrested. It was weird.
and the only reason we know that is because no charges were laid. We don't know the person. We just know that no charges were laid. So
Yes.
we presume that they were never captured. I love this because he's actually spot on. Lord Andrew Bruce of House McInnes. Carly, you seriously need to look into the computer game Far Cry 6 and what it looks like, so much like those photos of Cuba. That is actually, I haven't played much Far Cry, but I've played a little bit, and actually you're spot on. The whole game has that kind of, it's a really beautiful sort of cinematic look, a lot like your photo, Carly.
I don't know anything about what you're talking about, but I'll take your word for it. But this one, has anyone had their bank accounts frozen or cancelled yet? No, I personally have not, but I do know someone this happened to. And it happened because of a complaint made about that person. So, yeah, they got debanked by Commonwealth.
Yeah, it's happening. So I've got some news on the banking front. I got, and I know a number of other people in my following and probably people watching, got a message from, I have an account with Bank West, and I got a message saying that they were, as of this month, they're going to start tracking your sort of habits and your behavior in terms of how you swipe and how you click and how you type, tracking your metrics, basically. It's sort of biometrics, but it's behavioral biometrics. It's how you use your phone. Tracking that as another layer of fraud protection to make sure that someone else isn't using your device and being able to try and detect that. What irks me is two things. Number one, they sent out that message on the 29th of July and said that they would commence in August. So that's not enough notice. There's not enough lead time for people to set up new accounts and get their money out of Bankwest if they don't want to comply with that. Number two, you do not have the option of saying no. If you want to be able to get into the app, you have to say yes. And I am all for people being able to make whatever agreements they want. Companies can set whatever terms and conditions that they want to set on the products and services that they provide. But I do have an issue with companies, even ones with clauses saying, yes, we can vary the terms and conditions, blah, blah, blah. If you make a variance to your terms and conditions that really substantially changes your relationship with the consumer, in this case, they are now taking from me data, information about me that belongs to me that has commercial value, without having, I would never have signed up to Bank West in the first place if that was one of the terms and conditions when I went to check them out. I would have gone somewhere else. And I have an issue with the ability to impose that now and say, oh, well, we're going to make this mandatory. There's actually a third layer, which is that the company that they have doing that, and this is actually thanks to one of my viewers who did some research on this for me, and I've been debating doing a video or not, but the company that's actually behind all of this sort of biometric stuff is a foreign company that has ties back to the World Economic Forum. If you look at who's on their board, they have ties back to the World Economic Forum. One of the founders of the company and one of the other significant people in the company are ex-Israeli intelligence and their IT, hacking kind of division. And I'm not some anti-Israel person like some people are. That's not automatically a red flag for me. But you've got ex-military intelligence and you've got World Economic Forum coming together to collect people's biometric and online behavior data on a grand scale from Australia, even though they're a foreign entity overseas. And my bank is going to force me to hand that data over. Otherwise, I can't access my money. That doesn't quite seem right to me.
No. And interestingly, when you talk about these stories, right, to your average normie, this wouldn't sound bad. This sounds like, it's the same with the under 16 social media ban. And I know this just because I've been talking to friends of mine who have kids who aren't, politically charged. And they're like, oh, Carly, but social media is a really bad place. Like, and actually I had someone use this and they said, but you get trolled and hated online. Like, surely you can see why this is a good thing. And I was like, you're missing the point. Your carrot to the stick. You saw the carrot. You didn't see the big fucking stick coming out to whoop you in the butt. Obviously this is a way. We know this is a way of ushering in digital ID, but it's digital so much IDs. Worse than that.
Yep.
What it is, and I know we were just talking about 1984 before. When you read that book, you're wearing the shirt. So Topher and I just talked about it before the chat started.
He's grifting. All right, I remembered how to grift today. There you go. That's me grifting. Yeah.
So when you go back, for those of you who haven't read it, go and read it because you're like, holy shit, this is like literally happening right now. There's a Winston, who's the lead protagonist. His job is to rewrite history. So the history comes down and, my imagination tells the story a bit differently. So you might see it differently. But I imagine this little thing pops down onto his desk, and it's his job to erase what currently exists and write in the new version. And that means dates always get skewed over, facts always get skewed over, and it's constantly evolving. If you're banning people from having access to key amounts of data that's available in real time, like YouTube, like social media, then basically you're taking away context. And people are going to start to go, well, oh, I heard that thing anecdotally, so it must be true. And so when you've got these young minds, I'm not saying that kids should be on Facebook and Instagram at 8. That's not what I'm saying at all. But if someone is curious, like I had access to rotten.com, man. Like I was 10. I saw what an autopsy body looked like at 10, and I saw a lot worse than that, but that's the cleanest thing I can say online.
Can I share a funny story about that? So I've recently brought on, a couple of weeks ago, I brought on a guy called Roy. He does my editing for me. He's based out of the Philippines. He's a gun. He's absolutely fantastic. He sends me a message on WhatsApp today because he's been cutting up the Oddcast. He could not believe that I didn't know what rotten.com was. Even in the Philippines, he was like, dude, how is this possible? So there you go. You got me. You got me on that one.
Well, but this is the thing, right? Like, I think people forget how savvy kids are. Like, give it a week. The kids will figure out a way to hack through it or get around it. That's not the issue here. It's the same with, you can't drink alcohol underage. Has that ever stopped a kid? You can't have a machete underage. Has that stopped anyone? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's worked out well.
Like, it's got nothing to do with the kids and everything to do with the fact that, like, people want to know, like, the government or, the powers that be want to know what you're looking at. They want to know what you're looking at, how frequently. I mean, you can request that stuff in a subpoena if you're tried for a crime anyway. But no, they just want to, like, who's collecting all this data and where is it going?
Very good questions, but I don't want to spend too long on this because there is a pile of comments that I haven't got to yet. I want to touch on this one quickly. Now, Miyagi actually made a little gopher with buck teeth for me. So thank you for that. Carly is working on one that is going to match the spicy Carls in the artistic design and direction so that we can ultimately put them both on the same garment or on a cap or have like matching plushies or something like that at some point in the future.
You'll see it
thank you for doing that. There is a Topher gopher on its way, but it is not ready to be revealed just as yet. And I wanted to jump to this comment. Patrick, the random roadie Van Roest, not sure. Here's one for the Scotch Fund. Thank you very much. And since Carly doesn't drink, I'm just going to take that for myself. Thanks.
There was a comment in here that I wanted to touch on because I'm sure you'll have something to say about this. Where is it? Hang on. I'm scrolling. Oh, hang on. This one. Let's look at this one first.
Two of my friends have had their MyGov accounts hacked. One was yesterday. The other was his partner who had a payment stolen and redirected to a different account. Yeah, it's pretty bad once we start. Like, governments are not good at securing IT services. I think we've seen that. We know that already. So, yeah, anytime we concentrate all of our data into one place in government hands, all we're doing is creating a honeypot.
Well, we just had the new chief commissioner coming out. He was so shocked at how antiquated our technology was in the police force. Like, that's the state of our government. They're using like 20 or 30-year-old tech.
Yeah, crazy.
All right, this one. Do you know about this?
Extending term limits. Some Gen Z are wanting a Caesar. No, I don't actually know about this. Talk to me.
Okay, so NIAB just recently passed a law for extended term limits and meaning that you can get re-elected because obviously he's had his 2 elections and technically that would be the end, but he's just extended term limits, which for those who don't like him, hey?
Extended or eliminated?
Extended.
So he's given himself a 3rd term, or like what's the new limit?
He can serve longer. I'll pull up the actual facts. But yeah, serve longer. So those who think he's a dictator, well, he's just helped that out, hasn't he?
He's certainly not doing himself any favors in that particular regard. And this is a genuine concern. You can love what he's done all you want. This is a genuine concern when because people can get into those positions, they can come in with all the right ideas, all the right intentions, then they can do really good things and then get a bit full of themselves. And 20 years down the track, the people loved him for the first 10 years. He got to do whatever he wanted, changed all the rules, became, president for life. 10 years after that, who has this man become? Well, we don't really know. I mean, there's a reason why term limits exist. I would share the concern of a lot of people on this one.
Okay, so I'll just read this out quickly. El Salvador's Congress has approved constitutional reforms to abolish presidential term limits, allowing President Nayib Bukele to run an unlimited number of times. The
Yeah, not
reform,
great.
reviewed under an expedited procedure, will also extend term times to from 5 to 6 years, while the election will be brought forward to 2027. Bukele, who has been the president of the Central American nation since 2019, is a polarizing figure. And then, so the opposition is saying that democracy has died.
Yeah, I got to say, not really excited about that. I know he's your mate. I know you love what he did, and I think he's done a lot of good stuff. I've voiced my human rights concerns all the way through, and we've talked about how to manage that and balance the two. Not going to re-prosecute that. Yeah, this is as a progression, as a step from there to here. No, not happy to see that at all.
I agree. And I'm just going to bookmark that for a second because,
Okay.
I don't think that anyone should have extended unlimited power. However, there is a part of me that does get quite frustrated at how quickly our governments turn over. Now, 20 years ago, I was fine with that because it wasn't like this massive pendulum swing. But let's take the US, for example. We've gone from a Trump to a Biden to a Trump. Now, let's say it goes back to Democrats. What I mean is like, and think of a pendulum. Traditionally, that swing was like this. It wasn't that jarring. Now the swing is like bang, bang, bang. And I just think like, okay, we've had 4 terms of Trump, and then obviously they have the midterms, which means that he basically gets 18 months if he's lucky to really push through what he wants, and then obviously that can get blocked in the in Congress or the House. And then in Australia, we only have 3 years. So by the time they get all their fucking paperwork done, they're already campaigning for the next election, so they don't actually ever get anything done. So I know we've talked about extending the Australian federal term limits to 4 years, and I could get around that, just not while I'm But do you know what I'm saying? So like, in a weird way, and I'm purely talking about this not from a just 30,000 foot view. I can see why 6 years would make sense. But because, think of Nayib, right? He's come in, he's somehow been able to clean up all this crime, put everyone in CCOT and make it work. And now if he lost the next election, they could immediately revoke all of that, put him back out on the streets, and El Salvador goes right back. And so you got that tiny snippet of better times. I wouldn't want to see that either. So I have this weird feeling like in his mind, he might be like, well, it's just a good idea because of this. Sure. But as we know, the way to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah. So I'm going to hard disagree with you on this one. Even the example that you've used with Trump, Biden, Trump, if they're switching from one party to another, it wouldn't matter how many times the same person ran. My issue isn't with Nayib Bukele running and getting elected because he's popular or getting voted against and voted out because he's not popular. My concern is that what tends to happen is these people get entrenched and they start to be able to manipulate and play with the judicial system, the electoral system, these sorts of things. The temptation, once you're in that position, is very, very strong. And the longer you're there, the more this creep, this scope tends to increase. And what you can end up with, if a country ends up being a one-party state, and it's being led, that party is being led by the same person over and over again, you end up with the most extreme form of that person for the same reasons that we've talked about how, California became a one-party state and became increasingly extreme. The same thing's happening in Victoria. Being a one-party state incentivizes extremity, whereas a two-party state incentivizes moderation. And so if you have a situation where Nayib Bukele manages to squash the opposition. There's no meaningful opposition. I mean, this is what they've done in Venezuela. They squash the opposition. There's no meaningful opposition. He is then freed up to become the most extreme version of himself. If he's forced to hand over the reins after 2 terms, then at the very least, he's then kind of moderated by the fact that he's out and a new person now has to go and kind of earn their stripes. I'm not worried about him getting voted out by the people. The people will get the consequences of that, and they deserve that. I'm worried about him not being able to be voted out.
Yeah. And as always, people start to get too confident, they overplay their hand, and then, corruption ensues. I do believe there should be, it's not term limits. Like, you can't serve in Congress after a certain amount of time. Like, that's it, you're done. Like, bye. You can't be a career politician.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. Now, can I just say, Jared Oldroyd has just set a new record for the biggest super chat. Yeah, correct response. The biggest super chat that we have ever had. So thank
Jared.
you, Jared. That's awesome. Now, 16-year-olds, too young to handle being online, but old enough and informed enough to vote. Yeah, this is the incoherence that we're getting, particularly from the Greens. They're the ones that hold both of those positions. You know, and Labor are kind of flirting with it. They're talking about it, but the Greens are really pushing for 16-year-olds to vote, and they're supporting the government's under 16s social media ban. It's almost, I mean, if I was conspiratorial, which obviously I'm not, but if I was, I would almost think that the Greens thought that there was some kind of advantage in having uneducated, uninformed voters. Now, that couldn't possibly be true, of course, but I could understand how some people might think that.
Yeah. Look, here's the thing. Like, if you had asked me this maybe 10 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, I feel like younger people should vote. Now, obviously, I'm older and wiser. I'm like, fuck no. You know, you get a little bit more intelligent as you get older. But look, I understand, because you're only as good as the education you've been receiving up until that point. And remember, most people are learning this stuff either in schools or via their parents. And so what I believe you need is to drive some of those ideologies, like try them on for size in the real world. And I've actually advocated for lifting the voting age, not because I don't want young people to have a voice. It's not about that. It's more so you think you know something. You're so passionate because you know, you have all these hormones and you feel like, you know, no one understands me. I see things differently. And then you go and get yourself beaten black and blue by the reality of the real world. And then you go, oh, shit, okay. I think you need to have skin in the game. So, and then the whole, just on that comment, you know, 16-year-olds being too young to handle being online. Well, they're allowed to be on OnlyFans. They're allowed to go to Pornhub. Like, don't worry. They're still getting their education, just not the one you think. It's
only social media and search engines.
But again, just on this, like, just let's hash this out. I know they're trying to say that now with Google and Apple Maps, you have to upload ID as well. But you can go on to Grok, you can go on to ChatGPT, Gemini, and you could Google the answers and search engine that way. And there's other ways that you can go back end, you know, to do what you want to do. All this is going to do is essentially push people into like the dark web and places where they probably shouldn't end up.
I guarantee you, before that ban comes in, if it hasn't been renounced, if they haven't repealed it and said, hey, we're not going to do this, within 2 weeks, you know, before the deadline, young people at school will already be circulating apps that will never get regulated. They're not run out of a country that cares about Australia's laws. They will find another way, and it will be a place, it'll be a honeypot for the very worst kinds of people that we do need to protect our kids from. This is the false binary. People say, either you support the government's ban or you don't care about keeping kids safe online. They pretend that those are the choices. And of course, that's not true at all. You can believe that something is good and believe that the government should stay the fuck away from it because it's good. And I don't want the government anywhere near it. And this is one of those things. Protecting your kids online is really important. Keep the government away from it because it's too important to be put into their hands.
Yeah. I actually had an article that I was going to bring up, and I thought we could go into it deeper on Wednesday. But since you've just brought up something, I screenshot it today. It was in the Australian Financial Review. Guys, can I just say, for all of the stuff that we talk about on this channel, I am reading some very dull articles. I just want you to know what I sacrifice for you guys. I'll also just put this in your pipe and just we'll smoke it later. Treasurer Jim Chalmers has been urged to consider a baby bonus. So, like, just park that. Back to AFR, if I find it. And it was talking about my new hometown or my new home state, Queensland. And basically they did a poll and they realized to sell a cup of coffee in Brisbane, there's 31 different processes that a small business needs to go to before they can sell a cup of coffee for $5.50. So what they mean by that is, like, that's all the red tape. That's all the, you know, all the, like, you know, bureaucracy that they're going to get through. This is madness.
It's unsustainable. You cannot survive that as a business. You cannot do that. That's insane.
And that's just Brisbane. I'd hate to know what Victoria is. I don't know if anyone's done those numbers. Why is it always the way that when I think of these things, I can't pull them up immediately? I'm not being rude. I'm just trying to find it.
While you're looking for that, Franco Cozzo, you buy from Franco Cozzo. Miguelo. Sorry, that's for all you Melbourne creeps out there.
Grand sale.
Grand sale. Brunswick and Foothills Cry. All right. Wait till you see how much of our critical infrastructure's control systems SCADA is exposed to the internet. Yes, I promise you. I've only heard. I'm not an IT guy, but I know people who are, and we are so much more vulnerable. You know why we have running water and a power grid? It's because China hasn't decided to shut us down yet. That's basically the only reason why we have functioning infrastructure. If there was ever a really serious conflagration between us, involving us and China, you had better believe that our everything, all our hospital computer systems would stop working. An enormous amount of just really critical infrastructure would just instantly collapse.
So this is the article. Australian Financial. Did you know there's a productivity commission? Because nothing says government like having a consultancy that's run with government or taxpayer money to investigate things, to give a finding that, actually, there's a little bit too much bureaucracy.
Yeah, that's right.
The irony. This is an
right.
interim report published ahead of Treasurer Jim Chalmers' Economic Reform Roundtable this month. The Productivity Commission said existing checks and balances on regulation were not working, and the economy was increasingly being held back by band-aid solutions, duplicate or inconsistent rules, and overly prescriptive and risk-averse regulations. Discuss.
We need to have a phase where we eliminate every single regulation. And maybe to keep things under control, to get people on board the project, we do it one industry at a time or something so that people don't kind of freak out and lose their minds. We remove them all and we only reimpose the ones that are really actually necessary in order to maintain public support for the project. Now, understand, I'm taking my libertarian hat off here. I don't think any of them are necessary, but we have to bring people along with us for the ride. We have to maintain sort of the public goodwill and support for a project, a deregulation project like this one. So we remove them all. And then as problems emerge, we allow only the ones that are essential to maintaining public support to be reapplied. And then we move on to the next industry.
Have you seen that Kerry Packer clip that's going viral at the moment? It's like an old one from it.
I used it in one of my videos only like 2 weeks ago, talking about how we need more grumpy old men. Do I know?
Oh, no, I think it's from the same. I think that was a Senate hearing, was it? But it's from the same thing, where he's basically saying that, you brought all these rules in 1986. I learnt the rules and then I maneuvered around them. And now you're saying that those rules aren't good enough. You want to change them again. He's like, since I was a young boy, I'm paraphrasing. Since I was a young boy, there has to be 10,000 new rules. And the problem is the book's this thick and no one knows them. So, of course, people will trip up. If you want people to understand the rules, repeal all the ones that you have and start again. And I was like, sir.
So now we have over 40,000. There are more than 40,000 rules, regulations, laws that apply to you no matter where you are in Australia. And then on top of that, to really understand those laws and rules, you then have to read all the court precedents that affect how they're interpreted and how they're meant to be applied, and obviously keep up to date as they get changed, which is why it's impossible for anyone to know the law. And so I've said this many times before in my second book, Good Christian. Actually, I said it in my first book as well. Here you go. Some more grift for you, everybody. Here you go. Buy my books. I've said in those books, it is inherently immoral to have a legal system that simultaneously is impossible to know, but also ignorance is no excuse.
Yeah.
To have those two things simultaneously in the same legal system is inherently immoral. It means that the system itself is inherently unjust. Not even commentating on whether the laws within the system are just or not. The system itself is systemically unjust if it is not possible for someone to actually know the laws that they are accountable to, and ignorance is no excuse for breaking.
Yeah. The other thing is too, I love that Carl doesn't watch Toad's videos. Damn it. I was doing so well.
That's all right. I don't watch my videos either. I make them. I don't watch them afterwards.
I see this guy 2 times a week. Surely that's enough. But I just lost my train of thought. Let's move on to something else.
Yes, your midlife crisis. Let's move on to that.
Excuse me. I still have 6 months to go. I'm not 40 yet. I am still 39.
But you got to think about these things in advance. You're moving out of Victoria. This is obviously midlife crisis phase. So you're doing the tree change. Or the sea change, one or the other. Are you going to get a Harley or a Triumph?
Neither. I'll get a Ducati.
Okay, fine. Italian crotch rocket, fine. You can do that if you want to.
It'll match my Ferrari.
Well, true. And I got to tell you, so I used to do track days on motorbikes. For those that don't know, mad keen motorbike rider. Haven't been on one for a little while. Kids kind of change your assessment of risk reward. But anyway, I used to do a lot of track days. I did all the Honda advanced rider training, all that stuff. You go to the track days down at Phillip Island, and all the guys are banging around on, Japanese sports bikes and whatever. I'm on my CBR 1100 XX, which is a ridiculously oversized motorbike for a racetrack, but it's a hoot. It's so much fun. But the bike that would bring everybody out to the pit wall to hear it go past it had just been released at the time when I was doing most of my track days. It was the Ducati 1198, I think it was called. And there was a bloke who showed up to all the track days, and he would ride this thing, and he had some exhaust on it, and the sound it made at full noise, full power, high speed down the Phillip Island Straight. I kid you not. 60-year-old hardened motorbike guys were getting up out of their deck chairs, because not everyone's riding at once. There's different groups, right? So all the guys who are taking a break are getting up out of their deck chairs and running over to get as close as they possibly can to the pit wall, because they want that impact in the chest that comes from this Ducati. It was one of the most incredible sounds that I've ever heard. So if you want to get a Ducati, you have my approval.
I had my motorbike license. Oh no, I had my learners, but I never went for the full license because a friend of mine's father sadly came off on the Great Ocean Road, and that was it for me.
Okay.
Yeah, and
that'll do it. That'll do it.
Yeah, I remember thinking.
Sorry.
No, go.
I was going to read this comment. So if you got more to say on that story, please do.
Oh no, I was just going to say it was a terrible accident, and I just went, you know what? I don't need to do that. So
yeah, I've only had 4 accidents. Only one of them hospitalized me though, so I had a pretty good run. I did all right.
Yeah.
Koala Blues says, new sub here and thoroughly enjoying your live. Thanks for all your info. Well, Koala Blues, welcome. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for the super chat. We do appreciate them.
We do require you to have a sense of humor if you want to participate. So if you don't have that, go.
Well, people without a sense of humor tend to self-select out of here pretty quickly.
Yes,
that tends to.
We do require you to have a humorist. But back to my midlife crisis.
Sure.
I actually, G is downstairs listening to this, and this will be the first time he's hearing it. I really want a 1979 Valiant Charger, and I want to do it up. Well, I just want to I want to make it mine. I want that car, and I want it to be rattling windows as it drives past.
So you have to do me a deal though. If you're going to do that, don't get one that's in original condition and do that to it. Keep the if it's in original condition, leave it alone, because that can never happen. You can never restore it back to original condition. Original is original. Find one that's on its way out and rescue it, and then you can do whatever you want to it. But don't take it pains me so much. I'm a big guy for rotary engines, and original condition RX-7s that haven't been mangled and munted by people who thought they were improving them are rare as hen's teeth now. They're really hard to find. So if you want to go bananas on a car, pick one that's on its way out. It's rusty, it's boggy, no one else is going to rescue it. Rescue that. And then, you know what? Clear conscience, you can do what you like to it, because if it weren't for you, it would have gone to the scrap heap.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have the approval. Yes.
Yes. All right. I look forward to having my windows rattled.
Do you know what? I really I know we've had this chat before, and for those of you who are new here, we do go down the subject of cars a lot. I really miss driving a manual. Not to say I want to drive one every day. I just miss driving a car.
Okay, so I've actually been looking up, because I don't fit in the RX-7s, unfortunately. The seat doesn't go far enough back for me. Yeah, you can get extra rails and blah, 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 but I've kind of given up on the RX-7s. They're stupidly expensive for what they are. What?
That is so offensive, Lyndon. That is so offensive.
Lyndon, send me the bill. I will pay. I will pay immediately. Whatever the bill is, I will pay it.
Really grumpy now.
That is well played. Lyndon. Well done. Well done. But I'm actually looking at second generation or onwards MX-5s, because you can get them relatively dirt cheap.
I said that to G last week, and he laughed at me.
No, but super fun. Okay, low power car, sure. But honestly, where can you have fun in a high powered car on the open road today? A high powered, high performance car is a track car only. these days. You cannot get out and have fun. So something with only a small amount of power, where it's really about technique and it has really great handling, limited amounts of grip, so that your cornering is challenging, limited amounts of power, so you've got to try and carry speed, and a manual transmission. I reckon just as a driving experience, it'd just be really satisfying. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
Do you know what I'm excited for in Queensland is I've told you I'm keeping Dexter until the end of time.
Yes.
But now I'm no longer I'm still precious, but I'm not that precious. So I want to take the roof off and just put like the sun visor, and that's it.
Right.
It's my car for paradise. And
okay, well, I mean that will dramatically increase the rate at which the interior deteriorates. But it is the kind of car where it's not that hard to work on and replace the dash if it cracks, or seats and that sort of stuff. So yeah, you've probably picked the right car for that.
Yeah, because you can't really do that down in Melbourne. You either it's either too hot and you get sunburnt, or it rains. So
yes. Now I want to get to this comment from Tony, because I think it's a great question. Oddies, thoughts on the Vic government push for work from home laws? Drum roll, please. Comments. Okay, you do your comments, and then I will share with you my conspiracy theory, which I'm releasing as a video tomorrow.
All right. I'm probably going to get what Topher's going to say wrong. Okay, two things. All right. And I will say this as someone who has been self-employed for like the past 15 years. I actually really miss the routine and the requirement of going somewhere and being around different people. I actually now have to actively go out of my way to try and force myself to go into situations where I'm around different people, where I'm in different settings, where I'm engaging with people. Otherwise, like, it could be a month. And the most I've seen is like, my dogs and the supermarket. You know, it becomes very insular, and there's a level of loneliness. Now, I'm a pretty extroverted girl, so I find, my social outlets in different ways. But what I feel like working from an office does, now I understand, I used to live in Geelong, and I commuted from Geelong to Melbourne every day for 9 years. And that was on the V line when it used to break down all the time. Like, I've done the 2-3 hour commute, and I used to go to the gym before I even got on the train. So I know what that life's like. Now, yeah, there was definitely times where you're like, oh, I'm so sick of this. And I understand that. I think having the option to occasionally work from home isn't a bad thing. Your kids are sick, you're feeling under the pump, you just need a day. Like, I totally am on board with that. But putting it into law that it's now a requirement to have 2 days a week from home.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone's talking about productivity. I think that's also part of it. That definitely plays into it. But also, if you don't need to be in the office 2 days a week, you're also saying that you probably don't need to be employed full time, which means maybe, just maybe your job can go overseas, or maybe there's some AI that we can implement. So basically what you're showing in the business is, you know what, we don't actually miss that 2 days a week, so we don't need you anymore.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of layers on this. My first one is, do you know what a modern minimum wage employee looks like in Australia? It looks like one of those flat touch screens that you see when you walk into McDonald's. That's what it looks like. They said, we're going to push up the minimum wage to help out young workers, and what happened was the jobs disappeared. The exact same thing is going to happen here, because exactly what you said, if companies have to get set up now so that their team can work out of the office, well, that also happens to be the exact setup required to have their team work from the Philippines. So a lot of these jobs are actually just going to get outsourced out of Australia. And I get, from personal experience, I can tell you, having people working for you in the Philippines is kind of cool. And their attitude towards work is way better than the typical Australian. But actually, I'm going to get really conspiratorial on you for a second here, because I want to bring this back up so people can see it. This is a real push from Jacinta Allen. Now, she thinks it's a vote winner. She thinks it's an election winner, and she needs help. So that's what she thinks she's found here. But I'm going to get conspiratorial for you on you, because last year, 2024, they lowered the threshold. Sorry, I've got a sore throat. I need these things to numb it. They lowered the threshold for land tax on commercial property from $300,000 down to $50,000. Now, what that did, it didn't really affect a lot of companies that had their own premises. If you're a corner shop operating, a fish and chip shop, that property is already worth more than $300,000. If you're running a mechanic or have a little warehouse, they're all worth more than $300,000 already. Those properties were already over the threshold. So why lower the threshold? What are they capturing? Well, not businesses with their own premises. They're capturing people who work from home. That's the point. That's the entire idea. So now all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of people who just use one room of their house for business or use the garage for some little 3D printing side hustle, whatever it is, they get captured and they now owe land tax under the new Victorian laws. 1 year later, she comes out and says, hey, everybody, we're going to make it your right to work from home. What does working from home mean? It means a home office. What does that mean? Well, it means that that portion of your house, which, by the way, $50,000 is less than one bedroom in a modern median Australian home. If your home is an $800,000 home out in the outer suburbs where they're building the brand new builds, one bedroom is $50,000 worth. So instantly, as soon as you convert one room into an office, you will qualify for land tax. And to me, I'm getting my little spider senses are tingling. And I think the whole point of this is actually a tax grab.
Oh, that's scary because I actually think you're right. I think you're right. It makes sense because, you know, what are we at? Like we're almost at $190 billion of debt going up every day. Like, where else are they going to get it from? It makes sense.
Yeah.
I think you've just like deflated everyone's balloons. And I just want to touch on this pro engineer. I understand your sentiment and I'm not undermining your job. But what I want to bring attention to is like, you know, you're saying you're pro engineer. So I imagine you're a pro engineer. You're probably someone that actually has passion and ambition and you probably enjoy your job or you work hard in it. And that's great. But you are the exception. Sadly, you are the exception. In most businesses, particularly big businesses, there's a big section of the working class, and I'm not trying to be an asshole, I'm just being honest, having managed these teams myself, that are quite lazy, that they do the bare minimum, they just scrape by. There's a lot of people like, oh, I'm just rocking up for my paycheck. They're the people that will be given the advantage to work from home, not people like yourself. I understand if you're self-motivated, like good on you. But a big part of this, like, and it's also can we just point out the obvious here as well? Like a lot of our service providers can't work from home. Nurses can't work from home. Tradies can't work from home. Policemen can't work from home. And I did see someone make this point. I wish I paid more attention to it, but she's like, oh, nurses I know work from home. And I'm like, what nurses work from home? I can't.
There are roles that can be done from home, but frontline can't be done from home.
That's what I mean.
You know, there are a lot of there are nursing roles that could be done from home, but the critical ones, no, of course not.
What supervisory roles where you're in charge of the rosters or, you know, managing the team? Sure.
So Australia has the highest ratio of bureaucrats to frontline staff in our hospital system. It's one of the reasons why it's so damn inefficient. And yes, a lot of those admin roles could be theoretically done from home, and many of them do have to be done by registered nurses because of certain qualification issues and insurance issues and just industry knowledge. So they're not wrong.
Here we go. Nurse on call.
Well, yeah, nurse on call. But you know, you got to be able to leave your home to get to telehealth. Yeah, Deaf Black Fella's correct. Telehealth. But you know, you can't be we need our wards to be filled with nurses who are working at the hospital at the time, and you know, same with police or emergency responders, or you know, can you imagine being an SES person, a big storm blows through and you're like, sorry, it's my work from home day today. Like, come on, get out of here.
Do you know what's interesting? Poor G did his back over the weekend and last week, and so he was at home with me. I told you not to try that position,
G. I told you that position was going to go wrong.
We're not talking about my sex life here on the podcast, but anyway. Last week, I think it was like Thursday or Friday, I took him to the physio. So we went down the main drag of like Hampton and all that area. And we both sort of commented how many young people were in cafes and walking around in the middle. It was like 10:30 on a Friday. And like there was so many people just not at work. And I get it, working from home and all those things, but I do think a lot of it is I'm working from home, you know?
Yeah, working, yeah. So the other thing that annoys me about this is the presumption on the part of Jacinta Allen that she knows what everyone needs, what's best for everyone. So she's selling this as a win-win-win. It's good for workers, it's good for employers, and it's good for families, good for kids and all the rest of that. Okay, if that was true, people would be jumping at it. You wouldn't need to mandate it and criminalize employers who don't do it. If it was actually good for productivity, there would be employers jumping on it now, and then other employers watching and going, did that work? Did that work? Because they're all, especially in a market like the one we have right now, every business is looking for an edge. Every business is looking for a way to cut some costs, improve productivity, reduce turnover, because turnover is an incredibly high expense in any business that actually trains their people in any way, shape, or form. Every business is looking for that. And yes, some businesses lag behind others. I'm not saying every business would be jumping on it instantly, but we would see a rush towards it because there are businesses that do offer it. And if there really were genuine, significant competitive advantages to offering that to their employees, then we would see the market moving that way. Now, again, people say, oh, but that's just the employers. What about the employees that want it? Okay, if all the employees really wanted it, then that would give the companies that offer it a huge competitive edge again, because they'd be able to get the best employees, or they'd be able to pay them less because the employee wants the perk of working from home. Doesn't matter who wants it. If someone wants it, then whoever's offering it will already have a huge competitive advantage, and the market will do its job. The market will send that signal. The very fact that Jacinta Allen is sitting there saying, well, this is what's best for everyone, but now I have to mandate it and make it mandatory and make you a criminal if you don't do it, tells me that the market is not signaling that this is what's best for everyone.
Do you remember, was it 10 years ago or maybe like 10 years ago, when all the big Silicon Valley offices invested heavily in their headquarters? So Facebook, Google, Twitter, there was like drink bars and like breakout rooms and yoga bars and right? And all of it was available to make your life better because that's what employees wanted. And there was all that rhetoric around, oh, you know, these young generations like millennials will all want like ball pits soon, right? That was the comment.
Yeah.
This is the flow and effect from that. Like, you know, oh, and there was videos. There's heaps of videos of this, particularly before X was sold or became X, of Twitter employees walking around going, day in the life of an employee at Twitter. And like, they don't actually do any work. So now it's like, okay, sorry, go.
Well, here's the funny thing, Carly. The younger generation's actually rejecting that. Younger generations actually just want work to be work. They just want to get on with work. And what they want now is a really clear separation between the two. When they're off work, they want to be left alone. That's why the right to be the right to the weekend, or the right to unplug laws were popular. They are genuinely popular. Younger people want to be able to work hard when it's work time and play hard when it's playtime. And so this idea that oh, we're going to turn work into more of a play experience. No, let me work, man. Like, let me just get in, do the job, finish my day feeling like I've done a good day of work, and then clock off and owe you nothing, have no obligations to you until I clock back on again.
Yeah. Do you know anything about this? Julian Smith's written, what are your thoughts on the Argentina citizenship by investment for Australians looking to exit Victoria? Is that a thing? Are you teasing me?
Yeah. No, it's a thing. So Julian, I'm not going to comment on anyone's individual citizenship program. Citizenship by investment is a thing. If you're in a situation where you've got the investment and that lifestyle looks good to you, I'd say, have a good look at it. I would personally recommend, before you drop your hard-earned money, wait until after so Argentina's coming up to its midterms. Now, at the moment, it's looking really good for Javier Milei, and he does not actually currently hold a majority in their parliament. He's the president, but he doesn't hold a majority in their Congress. So a number of the reforms that he wants to do, because there's more that he wants to do, are actually getting blocked. Wait till the midterms. If he gains a majority in the Congress and is able to then push through more of his agenda that way, I'd say that's a really good signal. If you want to be really safe, wait till his next presidential election. If he gets elected a second time, I think at that point, that's when you go, okay, I'll drop the cash and I'll make that investment. Personally, I'd be holding off at least until the midterms, which I think are late this year. But that's just my 2 cents worth. That is not advice. Seek professional advice from a qualified professional and take into account your own personal circumstances and all that guff.
You can read that joke, and I'm going to segue across to the next topic.
All right, I want to read this joke because I've got a joke of my own afterwards. Patrick, the random roadie Van Royst, has said, irrelevant dad joke number 52. What do you do if you are addicted to seaweed? Sea kelp. So I will see your joke there, Patrick, and I will raise you. How do farmers in New Zealand find their sheep in long grass? Very attractive. Nothing from Carl's. Just giving me a death stare.
You done?
Wow, Carly.
All
just
right.
cold.
this topic. I have a lot to say on this topic. So nearly half of young Australians are lonely, new reports reveal. And you sent me another one, which was in The Age, was it? Which is basically saying...
Yes.
So basically, there's a lot of discussion now around, I don't know what they're calling young. I'm gonna say Gen Z. I might be wrong, but maybe, Gen Z. Hang on. Yeah. So your Sydney Morning Herald article says, Annabelle King says the Sydney dating scene is not for the faint-hearted. While some of her peers are coupling up, the 27-year-old fears she is falling behind. And the heading is, has Generation Z abandoned love? Oh, I have so much to say.
All right, go for it. Come on, let's get spicy. You've only got 45 seconds until we're time up.
45 seconds? What?
Well, it's nearly an hour and a half.
Oh, we're going for 2 hours. Fuck you.
I'm changing the deal.
Okay,
yes.
So with this is a result of feminism. This is it, plain and simple, right? You have told women for so long that they can have everything, that a man should be emotional. He should, basically fall on his knees for you. He should open the car door. He should pay for everything, but he also should be there and emotional, and he shouldn't be interested in anything manly because it's toxic, and anything that he does is toxic, right? I'm going to conflate a couple of issues, but I'm painting a portrait. In Bondi Beach just recently, they've banned the free weights from the open public gym because it encourages too much testosterone, right? Too much masculinity on display. And at the same time, we're telling boys that all of the things that men love to do is wrong. And all this is on the back of the woke agenda, where we had to believe that overweight women are attractive, that having underarm hair is sexy, that if you have multiple piercings and 63 different colors in your hair, you can be beautiful. What we've done is confuse the messaging, and people seem to have forgotten that the whole thing of attraction and love is biological. It's there for a reason. And I would also argue it's spiritual. The whole point of love is to bring a man and a woman together to procreate. That is its basic purpose, right? We're one of a few species on the planet that spends our life with a mate. I think it's platypus, dolphins, and a host of others that only, have one mate for the whole time. You could be an arachnid that eats your mate after you've mated, but humans, we don't do that. We don't encourage cannibalism. And so what you have is young women who have been basically indoctrinated to despise men, to think all men are evil, all men are going to do something horrible to them, but also yearn for a big, strong man who's going to save you and pay for everything. Those two things can't exist at the same time. Further to that, Gen Z was brought up on their phones, behind the iPads, behind the screens. They can't even pick up the phone to have a conversation. How the hell are they going to date? That's going to require you to put yourself out there. And also, one other thing, Gen Z were brought up to not understand what rejection and failing feels like. So they got participation trophies. They got told that there's no such things as winners and losers. Well, unfortunately, when it comes to dating, you get rejected a lot. It's not personal. It's not saying that you're a terrible person. It's just you're not the right one. It's square peg, round hole. You got to keep going until you find your missing puzzle piece. But now you have these young girls who take every rejection so personally. How dare you not find me attractive? You're a bigot. You're a racist. You're a homophobe. That's the rhetoric from the feminist women. And so now what you've got is men who don't want to approach women. That's a whole other point. Men can't catcall. Men can't approach because you're trying to attack me, or it's a terrible thing. It's sexism. And now women are wondering why men don't hit on them. Like, this is what you wanted.
So men won't hit on a blue-haired feminist for the same reason that swimmers don't hug a blue-ringed octopus. Right? It's the exact same thing. It is toxic, it is dangerous, and you're just going to get yourself hurt. No one on the planet wants to spend their life living in an intimate relationship with someone who hates them.
Yeah.
And the problem is that feminism has taught women to hate men. And yes, Amanda Troll, you're going to go, straw man argument. No, it's literally true. Feminism has taught women that men are the cause and the source of all of their problems. Women can have everything. And if you don't have everything, it's a man's fault that you don't. And if you live with a man, it must be that man's fault that you don't. So feminism is literally toxic to relationships. I've talked about the levels of bonding, and that base level of bonding of shared success, shared triumph, and shared trials cannot happen with a feminist. If there's a feminist in the relationship, there are no shared triumphs. We didn't triumph together. I triumphed in spite of you, and there's no shared trials. It's not we're going through this together. It's I'm going through this because of you. And so that whole third layer of bonding is completely removed out of any relationship with a feminist. So there's an enormous number of men that have just realized this is a rigged game. There is no such thing as a feminist that will ever love them, that will ever actually bond with them and connect with them. And they're opting out of the game entirely. And it's kind of hilarious now to watch some of these really toxic women jumping up and down and going, oh, where have all the men gone? Well, you can laugh all you want, but a lot of them are going overseas, because there's a lot of women in a lot of other cultures that haven't been taught to hate men. And no, it's not because they can't handle a strong, independent woman. It's because a strong, independent woman isn't capable of loving anyone but themselves a lot of the time.
I agree with that. And also, do you really want to be in a relationship where everything is a battle? Everything requires some kind of like, duel where you sit there and you talk about your feelings. How fucking exhausting. I'll give you an example, and I'm sure G won't mind, but G was in a relationship just before me. And every Friday, like clockwork, she would sit him down and go, all right, this is where we went wrong this week. This is what happened this week. Everything that he did now that he does for me that I love about him, she found to be, toxic or wrong, or, he's treating her poorly. And this is the issue. Like, men are pretty simple, as in like, you're simple. You are simple, but also they're easy to please. Men want to just be loved by a woman. It's like, it's really that it. They don't actually need a lot, where women have these fucking lists. And I can say that because I know these women. They've got checklists. He needs, we can joke about the whole 666 thing, but it goes more than that. How does he feel about this? What does he do with that? What kind of job has he got? What are his icks? Like, there's a whole thing on TikTok called icks. And these are really like nominal, simple things that women will go, oh, if he does that, nah, in the bin. Right?
Yeah.
How exhausting. Imagine that. Oh, like, I'll give you an example. On my Tattle Life thread, people were making fun of G because he has a pair of Element cargo pants. Like, they were like, oh my God, that's such an ick. Like, okay, so you are going to throw a man out of the dating pool because he wore cargo pants. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And you wonder why you're single? Fucking hell.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite incredible. And the entitlement that comes with that. And we've talked before, I'll touch on it very briefly. Women think that they can make themselves more attractive to men by becoming more like men. They think that the pathway to getting a high value man is to become a high value woman via the same metrics as we measure the value of men. Well, being a high value woman requires you to be different to a man. The women are incredible because of the differences. And when you become a high performance woman and then you still want to date up, let's say you've made lots of money, you've sold a business, you built a business, you sold it, you're 40 years old, you're ready to have some kids, you had your eggs frozen a little while ago because you were running out of time, and you've got $50 million and you want to date up. Guess what? The guy who's got $100 million does not care about your $50 million. He does not care. The least valuable thing to him is money. And the same is true if you're on a $200,000 salary and you're dating a guy on a $250,000 salary. The least valuable thing to him is money. What he wants is a home. He wants someone who's going to create a place of warmth and comfort and inviting, where he's welcome and he can actually feel like he wants to feel like a man, like a king in his own little domain. And you can call it whatever you want, lady feminists, but sorry, you're the ones missing out. And it's the person that brings no money, but brings warmth and softness and is proud of her man and lifts him up and empowers him to become even greater than what he already was. That's the woman that actually gets those high value men. And the women who thought they were out competing those other ones, oh, I've left her way behind, she's way behind me, I've got way more money, way more status, look at the handbag I've got. They end up alone. They're the ones that the dance is over, the music has stopped, the lights have been turned on and the floors are being swept, and they're the ones still standing there without a partner.
I know that because I have those friends. I look around at my other single girlfriends, and I've had them sort of distance themselves from me because I've now found a relationship. And I know I've shared this story before, but I was single for 12 years by choice. I just hadn't found that person. It's not that I wasn't dating. It's not that I wasn't trying. I just was like, hey, you're really nice. I'm sorry, just you're not for me. And like, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm just like, hey, I don't want to waste your time. And I met G, and it's funny because his whole thing was like, the reason I wanted to meet you is because you had in your bio that you were right-leaning. And he's like, you're like literally the only girl on the platform that did that. So ladies, inside tip, if you're single and you want to pick up a man, on your bio, just say, that you're not a fucking crazy lefty. You'd be surprised. But, I think a lot of these women get caught up in these, well, I want this. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
I want a lot of things and I don't always get what I want.
Yeah, correct.
Sometimes it's about compromise.
And there's a world of difference between someone, I'm going to use the context of women. There's a world of difference between a woman that wants to have a husband versus a woman that wants to be a wife. There is a world of difference between those two things. And superficially, they can look the same. You can get tricked very, very easily thinking, oh, but she wants a husband. She's really keen. Yeah, but does she want to be a wife? And same for men. You want a wife? Well, that's a very different thing to wanting to be a husband. And if you want to be a husband, you're going to turn into a much better man and a much better husband than someone who just wants to have a wife. And I think that's a distinction that we need to kind of impress upon younger people before they enter the dating pool, is understand this. Do they just want to have you and have someone to fill that spot in their life? Or do they actually want to be for you the person that you ideally need in that spot in your life? Because those are two very different objectives.
Yeah, I think there's a whole host of other things as well. It's like the social media thing, the whole grass is greener. You see this a lot, women putting their entire relationship on display. I don't know many men that do that. I'm not saying that men don't do it, but I know that for a lot of it, for women, it's like, look at what he did for me. Look at this. And all I can think of is like all of these happy moments, like supposedly happy memories that look picture perfect. What's going on behind that? Is there a man who's like putting this all on the credit card just to get you to give him some attention? Like if you're constantly sitting there looking picture perfect, your makeup's done, your hair's done, you posed in front of this, whatever this thing is that you're doing, what actually happens behind all that? Is there ever a moment where just the two of you are on the couch and you've got your hair up in a bun, you're having a cup of tea and just having a laugh?
Yeah, I cracked it at someone just actually in the last week or so. Someone that we know is going out, and it's getting fairly serious, and they're talking about engagement rings. And I heard a couple of women of varying ages talking about, oh well, you're worth so much. Like he'd better buy you a ring that's really worth blah blah blah. And I got pretty, like, that really got under my skin real fast, because neither of the people in this particular relationship are I mean, they're both lovely and there's nothing awful about them, but it's not like they're outliers. It's not like they're exceptional people at the very top end of the dating pool. They're just people in the dating pool. Regular incomes, regular decent sort of jobs, hardworking people that I like, but not people in a position to be pretentious. And yet there was this attitude of the amount that he spends on that ring is a direct representation of how much he loves you. And if he's not willing to spend enough, well, he doesn't value enough and you should walk away. That was the genuine undertone of this conversation. And to me, it's so degrading. I've said this before. I'll say it again because we still haven't been cancelled. If your view of your man is he doesn't get any action, he doesn't get anything from me unless he spends money on me, unless he's got to earn it, right? Well, congratulations, you're now a prostitute, right? Yeah. If you are turning intimacy and sex and romance into a transaction, has he paid me enough yet to deserve a repayment? Congratulations, you're a prostitute. And guess what? A high-value man that has money, if he has to buy you, he can buy anything he wants. And at some point, you might find that that's no longer you. You need to bring him something that he can't buy. That's what marriage is actually for. In both directions, to be clear. It's about bringing to the table things that money can't buy and giving those things freely to each other. That's what makes a marriage or a relationship work.
Yeah. I think there's also an element of OnlyFans and porn culture that's really ruined it for young people. I know this from a conversation I had with someone who worked with me for a little while. They were Gen Z and they'd done the whole OnlyFans thing themselves. And they'd met this guy, and I'm just going to try and be like loose on the details, but they'd met this guy and straight away within like days or maybe that's what she told me. It was probably within hours. They'd already exchanged like nude photos of each other. And they're already straight up going down that road. And like, I get it when you're young, hormones racing, all that sort of stuff. But there's this proclivity towards over hypersexualization of everything. You know,
Yeah,
and if that's where you're at, where that's what it needs to be, I need to sleep around, I need to get his body count, like all these, you know, we've gotten to a point where sex is no longer special. And I know I sound really dated saying this. What I'm
So
saying is
sorry, where
like,
are your pearls? Shouldn't you be
all
clutching some
right.
pearls right now?
But this is the thing. Young women are being told to go and sleep around. Like,
Yeah,
go and have your OnlyFans. You can
yeah,
have all that. And then they get surprised that, well, men don't like that. Men don't like the fact
yeah,
that everyone's had a crack. Now, that's really outdated. I'm not allowed to say that at all, like, because that's very
yeah,
anti-feminism. But this is the thing that I think people are forgetting. And I'm not traditional in any sense. But if all you care about is going and racking up your body count and having heaps of casual sex and casual relationships and being in
mm,
situationships where you're non-committal because you know what, you're free and you can do what you want, you might find that you are not actually developing all the parts of your character that make you truly attractive. You're
yeah,
focused on the sex. Great, no worries. Everyone loves a bit of good sex. But actually, what you're doing when you're in all of these crappy little situationships and you're tied up in all that, you're not doing
mm.
any of the stuff that makes you a good partner, that builds up your values and your foundation, that makes you someone that someone wants to spend their life with, so that when you do inevitably go through hard times, you are well positioned and emotionally
Yeah.
balanced enough to go through it with that person.
And that's the thing. You're not practicing. If you're sitting there going through person after person after person, you're not practicing for relationships. You're practicing for breakups. That's what you're
Yeah.
actually doing. You're getting really, really good at walking away the moment things get hard. And that's not to say that just because you've started going out with someone, you're stuck with them for life. There is a place for going, actually, you know what, this isn't going to work. That's what dating is for. But no, there's this idea that, I'll just play around for ages and just, you know, no, you've practiced breaking up and you haven't developed that muscle of actually
Mm.
working through the hard stuff.
Well,
But I'm
it
mindful
also
that it's
makes.
9:15.
All right, we've got 15 minutes because last week we did go
No,
for 2 hours.
we can't keep doing 2 hours, Carly. Come on. I've got kids
All right.
upstairs asleep. My alarm is set for 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. I got to
Oh,
go to
what? He
bed. I'm
just
an old
rang.
man now. I'm an old man.
I love that. You probably need at least 100K in the bank to talk to Carly. Is that you projecting, mate? That's a bit rough. Where's this comment? No. You can say whatever you want. I'm actually happily taken, so it doesn't matter what you need. But I will say this. I think people don't take enough time to think about what their values are and what they really want, which is why people who get married too young, when they're really young, end up in divorce, and why people can't seem to find relationships. I don't think it's about age. What I think it is about is figuring out who you are and what you want for your life and finding someone
Yeah.
that fits into that, not trying to get the partner and then molding that partner after the fact.
Yeah. And it's also, you are half of your marriage. And you are with yourself all of the time in your marriage. So the flaws that you have that get irritated by being married, that get irritated by that other person, you're living with your own flaws all of the time, and they can escalate really quickly. The problem is we think it's the other person. And
Yeah.
that's not to say that the other person's never the problem, but actually we always need to look at ourselves first. It's not to say that we're always the problem, but always check yourself first. And again, if you've just gotten into the habit of walking out of relationships, the minute it's hard, the minute you don't like the tone they used, the minute they're not available to you when you wanted to go out tonight, and you're like, oh, well, too hard, I'll go and find somebody else. You have never actually spent any time looking at yourself and going, hang on, before I get mad at you, let me just self-check first and make sure that I'm not actually the problem here. And if you don't develop that muscle, well, you're going to be in a lot of conflict over your marriage, over the course of your long-term relationships, and you're going to think it's the other person the whole time when it's only the other person some of the time.
Yeah. Do you know, G and I have never had an argument, not once, not even like close to it. And I think
I
a
don't,
big part of that is attributed to the fact that, you know, we both kind of know who we are, and like that's who we showed up as in the relationship.
yeah,
It wasn't like oh, you know, I hope he likes me. I'll pretend to be interested in that.
putting on a
I think
face.
there's a lot of
Yeah,
that.
yeah, which is good. I've started having a lot more. They never become genuine arguments, but I've started being a lot more assertive in my marriage in the last sort of year and a half or so, and having much stronger opinions about how I want things to be. I was raised, my dad raised me, my family raised me to be very deferential, to always prefer others. So if I have a preference and you have a preference, I'll defer to your preference. Well, let's watch the movie you wanted. Let's arrange the house in the way that you said, that sort of stuff. That's how I was raised. And when you end up in a relationship with someone who is raised differently to that, then you can end up feeling very taken for granted. It's not that the other person is actually being selfish or is trying to take you for granted or anything like that. It's just that they show up differently in a relationship. And so I found, and again, this is about checking yourself first. I found myself sitting there going, "Oh, you're never reciprocating." Well, hang on. Have I actually articulated what I'm doing and helped her to understand that I'm doing this in the expectation there's going to be some what comes around goes around, not keeping score. That's a dead end. But like, I'm going to get something back at some point. And it's like, well, she doesn't see it that way. She doesn't understand relationships in that sense. So I've had to go, hang on, I actually, in order to stop hurting myself, because that's what I was doing, I need to show up and be more assertive and more confident and actually say, no, this is how I want things to be. And since I've started doing that, that's actually improved things in the relationship. And I think it's partly the communication aspect of it. When I was saying, no, that's fine, what I was communicating to her was, that's fine. And that's what she was hearing. What I thought I was communicating was, hey, I'll sacrifice what I really want for you. That's what I thought I was communicating, but I never said that. I said, hey, that's fine. And she heard, that's fine. And so by me actually saying, this is what I want, and then sometimes I will still be the one that defers. I'll still be, I'll say, well, this is what I want. She'll say, well, that's what I want. And sometimes we'll go with what she wants, but she understands now that I've deferred something. I've said, hey, I will put my preference as a lower priority to yours. And so the communication side was actually missing. I thought I was being nice. Actually, I just wasn't being honest. And so that's what I mean with just checking yourself first. Sometimes even well-intentioned thing. I thought I was doing the right thing, but actually I created a problem in the relationship that didn't need to be there.
Look, we should start our own dating advice channel.
Okay.
I think you remember my advice about the shower, and I told my friend, and that sent everyone off in,
It's good advice. It's good
It's
advice.
It worked.
I'm not going to repeat it. It's good advice.
But yeah, I genuinely feel sad for the young generation if that's the case. But I remember millennials were brought up on Sex and the City. Let's finish with this. So my generation and, Gen X, we watched Sex and the City, which was obviously the 4 women in Manhattan who were unlucky in love and just sort of enjoyed casual sex and their careers and things like that. I remember, because I was young when it came out, looking at Carrie Bradshaw and wanting to be her so bad. I wanted all the fashion, I wanted to live that amazing life. And
all the glamour.
But I had a really brief stint at night clubbing, like going out and going to bars. It wasn't for me. I wasn't cut out for that life, not even a little bit. I don't like it at all.
The only time I got into that was when I was doing salsa dancing. So I was a salsa dancing instructor for a couple of years, just basic level instruction. And I was pretty active on the Melbourne social salsa dancing scene. And the thing I loved about it was people didn't usually drink heavily because you're dancing, like properly dancing. You need your wits about you. You need your balance. And I just found that a really wonderful, you met people, you got exercise, you didn't drink that hard. The night wasn't that expensive because you weren't drinking all that much. That was the one time I got into any form of clubbing. The whole doof, 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 doof kind of, you can't hear yourself think environment. Even when I was the age that you're supposed to be into it, I just wasn't. It's actually a really isolating, lonely environment because you can't actually connect or communicate with anyone.
Yeah, I just wasn't interested at all. But just this comment here, is Carly a Samantha, a Miranda, Carrie, or a what's her name? Bloody hell, Charlotte.
Don't ask me. Okay.
It's what's funny is I would have given you an answer for that a few years ago, and now as I've gotten older, I'm like, I don't relate to any of those characters because they're all caricatures of women. But there's a key character missing, and it was the honest friend. And I mean, Samantha was as close as we got to the honest friend, but I actually feel like, and I could be wrong, but this is just how I feel. Women haven't actually had a really good role model for a really long time. And I now know this because I'm going back and rewatching things and movies and TV shows that I grew up with. Even like I was watching Gilmore Girls, right? And I used to think Lorelai Gilmore was an awesome woman. Now I look back and go, she was actually a real brat. She was really ungrateful. So was Rory. And it's interesting how your perception changes, right? So I don't know, ladies in the chat, do you believe we had good female role models? I would argue I don't think we really did.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick, once again. You've been wonderful supporting us tonight. So Adam Oz, I want to clarify, Topher was a dancer. That was a long time ago. And there's a thing about salsa. It involves a lot of spinning. I used to be able to do triple spins and so forth. And as you add mass, the energy required to initiate and to stop a spin dramatically increases, and the amount of grip that you need in order to stop dramatically increases. So I would not even try to do some of what I used to do. I would either break myself or end up sprawled all over the floor.
I'm not going to comment.
I
was raised to not say something. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And that's how I'll say about your dancing. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
I thought you were talking about the comment there for a second.
No,
you know,
no, I was talking about your dancing.
Ophel was a dancer, yeah.
Well, we should probably go.
We probably should. And Deaf Blackfella, you're not wrong. I could, because I'm sitting on an office chair that will spin me around for me, but that's not quite the type of spinning that we're talking about. Listen, Carly, this is too much fun. We have too much fun, and that's why we keep going overtime. We need to have less fun.
Do you know what the problem is, and I think people in the comments would agree to this, is because we don't actually have set topics that we talk about. We go on a billion tangents, and then it becomes fun, and then we start talking about all the things that we used to love when we were younger.
Yeah. And it is literally, we are allowing 1,351 people to be flies on the wall for the kinds of conversations that you and I used to have with no spectators. And we just said, hey, everybody, what if we had a camera and we let you in? So that's why it works.
Guys, thank you again for the super chats. But as always, if there's any particular topic you want us to deep dive on, we'll happily do that on Wednesday. It's a bit hard when it's live. But I hope you guys are getting something out of this. I mean, actually, some good news. Our podcast downloads are exploding. Like it's getting big numbers now.
Yeah, nice. Excellent. Well, I know we're getting some decent views. Oh, I have some wonderful news for you, Carly. Let's finish on this because this is genuinely good. So going to let everyone in on a bit of a secret. Carly isn't quite as thick-skinned as what I am. She hasn't been doing this for as long. And so I've had to coach Carly on a few occasions just to kind of just get over it and stop giving a rat's ass what any of you say.
Some people mean.
But one of the things that bothered Carly for a little while was that on my channel, I upload my own videos and I also upload segments of the Oddcast. And segments of the Oddcast don't tend to do as well as my own videos. Well, that makes sense. My audience follows me for my videos more so than anything else. But there was a little while there where the Oddcast segments really weren't getting a lot of love. They were getting like 1,000 views, maybe 1,500 views. But Carly, in the last couple of weeks, the segments from the Oddcast that I'm putting up on my channel are consistently getting 4, 5, and sometimes 10,000 views. So I am happy to say that my audience is warming to you. They are beginning to see in you what I've seen all along as a fun podcasting partner, and people are beginning to tune in. So I hope you feel better about yourself.
I'm like a bit of mold. I grow
bit of fungus.
over time.
Yeah, you're like a good fungus. So on that happy note, I think we should wind up before we dive down another tangent.
Well, I think so. Guys, thank you again for tuning in. It's every Monday, 7:30. We do it live, and then the podcast goes up at 7 p.m. on Wednesdays. So,
yep.
Oh, look at all this love. We've got to give some Topher some love. I'm not that fragile, but thanks, guys. I do appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Good fun. Let's get out of here.
All right, guys. Have a lovely night, and we will see you next week. Bye. Bye.
Are you clicking the button? Because I haven't clicked the button. You do it? Is it me?